On this AVNation special, we take a look at networking AV over IP, private LAN versus public LAN, what sort of architecture, and how we get those protocols to play well with others. All that and more next on this AVNation special.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is an AVNation special, networking AV over IP. This is Tim Albright with AVNation. We're doing an AVNation special. We are taking a look at the current state of AV over IP and some of the architecture and some of the programs that are available. With us to talk about that very thing, first and foremost, closest to me actually, is my old buddy, Mr. Eric Steiner from Conference Technologies. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great today.
Good. Also with us is Mr. Paul Miller. Paul is from AVI Systems. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic.
And last but not least, John Hinkle. John is with Netgear. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So let's kind of go down the list here. Eric, we'll start with you on this. Avixa's released a couple of numbers in their own research about the adoption rate for AV over IP. When we look at those numbers and we look at what you guys are hearing and seeing in your projects and what you're putting into place, are those numbers bearing out? Is that about accurate for adoption rate for AV over IP?
I think so. Actually, I think our numbers might be slightly higher, only because way back when we had to we were thrown in some projects that were advanced. So we've been dealing with it probably a little longer than most people, only because we were brought in some niche products and started learning about it probably a little bit earlier than other guys, just by chance, So for us, it's getting actually pretty hard to justify using standard matrices anymore, just with the cost savings for it. I mean, even down to I can't think of anything right now that I would use a large backplane matrix for that's over a 4x4 that will pan out financially cheaper than the matrix itself versus an AV over IP solution.
Paul, is that the driving force there? Is it the large backplane systems? We're not talking about a 2x2 or a 4x4 matrix, but we're talking about 64x64s.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all back to the economics of what's going on. Being able to go through and pack that much technology, and again, bandwidth inside of, again, a network, whether it be what we would call an AV network or the customer's production network. Again, the idea of trying to go through and build this up in the classic matrix side, the costs are staggering.
Let's talk about the cost of that and bringing that back around to some of the cost benefit analysis, Eric. When you're looking at, is there a magic number? I mean, and we all kind of joke the fact that, it's derivatives of 6 or 8. So you have an 8x8, then you have a 16x16, and suddenly you're up to 128x128, I think is some of the larger ones. Is there a magic line there where, you could do an 8x8, but when you start getting 16x16, that's the line? Or
actually,
is it 32? I
can prove that it's a 4x4 right now. So,
okay.
Yeah, you get down to your cost per port, right? So, what we'll do is you take all the gear it takes to get you your 4x4 and divide it by 8, right? And that's your cost per port with everything in there. And if you think of it that way, when you start doing those calculations, it's like, really where I'm at is it's the middleware on it, not changing it back to an HDBaseT or an HDMI conversion and not needing the backplane on it and then relying on the switch. I mean, you're looking at $40 per port for the middleware right now on the switches. And I think what kind of caught up in the industry was that your HDBaseT transmitters and your AV over IP transmitters costs are pretty close to each other in cost now for your transmitter and your receivers. You might get some advantage of, if you're going to dump it in your rack and stuff like that, but the ability to add one more input at the last second and all that, it doesn't make up for it. And I had sales guys come up and argue with me all the time on it, but to be quite honest, down to even 4x4s and 6x4s, I'm showing them $4,000 in savings on their projects by going to AV over IP.
Good night.
Now,
if I can
you got to give up HDR and a couple of other things like that. But because some of the transmitters aren't there that can do it at that point.
At that
Let's
price
just be
point,
honest. Yeah, let's just be honest. That price point and that quality, you got to look at that. Now, some of the more expensive ones, yeah, probably we can take a look at that. But is that needed in a conference room, right?
Yeah.
One thing if I could add on to that too that I see, it's when the needs are asynchronous, right? If you have 2 inputs but 20 outputs, that's where it's really making more sense to go into AV over IP.
Yeah. So in other words, when you've got a disproportionate, or you're basically paying for ports or paying for outputs or inputs that you're not simply using, right?
Exactly.
Paul, I want to bring this around to another topic that has been honestly debated, and I've heard from various folks. I'm starting with you because I know Eric's answer. I'm going to still ask it to him anyway. But that is the debate over a private or public land, or the production land, as the IT industry is wont to call it. In other words, the actual network that everything else gets done on. Right. This is the production land is where the email happens and where all the other communications, both internally and externally, happen. That's the production land, right? That's the one that these folks are using on a daily basis. When AV over IP is debated and talked about a lot of times, it is the question of, is your client going to want you to put AV over IP devices on their existing network, or is it one that they're going to rely on folks like AVI Systems and CTI to bring in and put a separate private LAN?
Yeah, so this is one of those, you're right, the challenge that always comes up regarding this is, again, which is the right way to go? And of course, the customer has the ultimate final say on this.
Yeah.
Now, the reality of what's going on inside of the marketplace is, I think we're looking at the evolution of, again, the maturity of how people are working with these networks. Now, that goes for both the IT side of it all and the AV industry as they're coming into this. And so right now, I think everybody's found that comfortable space where if we build them as 2 separate networks and make one single link between them, we'll all get along just fine and everything will be fine. Reality is, though, we know the networks can handle it. The robustness needs to be there. And it actually gets to be, in a lot of ways, much more complicated when we go through and separate these off, because as we keep going forward inside of this, the idea of looking at the metrics, the status reporting, all the things that we want to do with watching what's happening inside of these systems and how they're being used, again, becomes far easier when we can go through and incorporate it as part of that production network than creating this kind of small, narrow channel where they can pull that information through. So I think what we're watching right now is just the natural progression of things going forward. This is just going to be another step along the way, and the idea of the AV network we'll probably stop talking about here soon enough.
All right. Eric, same question. When you are talking with your clients, or they're talking, giving you feedback on this, which way are they predominantly going?
And first of all, let's think about the tools we're using, right? And going back even one step further, AV over IP isn't a religion. People treat it as a religion. Let's put
no, it is a religion.
Right?
It is totally a religion.
And let's do it at the sake of, would you put your HDMI matrix? Did you have to know every port of your HDMI matrix on your network? No. What I did is just create a solution for you that's cheaper, that doesn't touch your network. I mean, because I'm building off-the-shelf pieces of gear, put it in at a lower price, and give you a ton of benefits. I can give you metrics, but why add the complication, right? You just outsourced 3 of your network staff last week, and you have so-and-so company on a managed contract here. When you upload your Cisco Catalyst firmware, is he going to go back through and align all the ports for IGMP? When a technician comes to the back of your rack, the reason why I love Netgear right now, we have one VLAN. We've learned how to make all this stuff work on one VLAN with the IGMP, keep Dante and everything happy on robust enough switches. So when the technician accidentally unplugs it from this port and plugs it into this port, as long as it's on our switch, it's not shutting everything down if it's all on one VLAN.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times where in the beginning days where someone accidentally unplugged a patch cable from here and plugged it into a major top 100 corporate company and shut down their entire network of multicast traffic.
Yeah.
And I hate the way it all started. To me, it seemed like the whole sell of putting AV out there to make it the same cost as HD-based what they did is they borrowed the cost of the Cisco gear out there. Some of the consultants did to equalize it to the same cost of HD-based in order to get that leverage out there in the beginning. And the way we combated that after we've gotten through our first couple like that and went through all the headaches with it, what we did was say, look, we got to mock this up in our shop. Here's what I'm going to do. Yeah, you guys are great. You guys have the best network guys in the world. I'm going to have it ready to go at my shop. I'm going to bring it in, and it's got my switches on it. This is how we set it up. This is what you need. And let me know when you want me to unplug my stuff and plug it into your network. And the thing is, yeah, I know the consultant didn't bill in these switches, but I'll tell you what, I'll deduct them directly from the order. I didn't have one client ever decide to put on their own network after they saw the traffic. So I think it just complicates it.
John, from Netgear's standpoint, when you guys start talking with clients and you start talking with dealers, and you walk them, this question inevitably will come up. You're a switch manufacturer, right? And not to be silly, but you guys don't really care whose traffic you're handling. You're handling a lot. And as Eric just mentioned, the fact that you guys handle Dante as well as AV over IP and actually, obviously, regular non-AV traffic. What are you hearing back from them? But also, do you guys have a take or a stance on this one way or the other?
Yeah, it's like you say, we really are agnostic. We can blend in with the company's current network landscape. I think that kind of depends on whether this is driven from the IT side or the AV side, right? I think we're finding out that we recommend people to separate the networks, like Eric's talking about, because it does make things a lot easier to implement, and there is no issue of crossing things over. But as Paul's saying too, it does actually make things easier sometimes, depending on the application, I think, to be able to do that. And we can do it either way. We can set up VLANs for you, as many as you want. Out of the box, we do that for you to make sure it's easier out of the box to set up and get working right away. And that's something that's part of our Netgear IGMP Plus package of features, really, if you will. So that's the great thing about being in the middle of all this. We can operate whichever way the facility needs to operate. And that even goes back to my time at other manufacturers saying, if you're coming into a system, we want to be able to operate with where you're comfortable with. We'll make some recommendations based on the input we get, but in the end, I want you to be comfortable with it so we can operate either way.
Yeah. Paul, let's kind of take a step back and before we get into the actual back of the rack, when we're designing a system, what are some things that the folks need to know about this is not your typical matrix? Yes, it's replacing the matrix switch a lot of times, but this is not always an apples to apples comparison.
Well, long list that's going to be inside of that, but we'll try and pare it back quickly for you. Biggest things that always need to be consideration is, again, start looking at, what's the bit budget going to be?
Yep.
How can I go through and figure out what all is going to fit on this? And again, what's going to fit within the back plane? Those are all important factors for people to go through and start calculating when they're doing their work on this. The other part of it that really becomes important as they're moving forward, again, I think it comes back to that link that we're talking about to the production network, is having those discussions early on with them, finding out what do they want to see, what do they want to allow back and forth between these two potential networks that are going to exist at this point in juncture, possibly for what they're going to be doing, or if we're landing directly on their network, again, how do we work in parity on this? And I think what really gets missed a lot of times is those early meetings and those discussions on that. In other words, a lot of times people were waiting until here's the day we're actually rolling in with things, and we're going to start working on this room. And it's, again, from an IT perspective, they're looking at that going, heck and no, you're not going to get this on my network today, and I'll see you in 3-4 weeks, and then we'll start talking. So that's where I would always want to have people, again, when they're starting their designs of these things, is get those discussions going early, start working through the math of what's going to be involved inside of this. And then I think you're going to see your plans and your projects work together much smoother, because now you're going to be able to go through, start mocking things up, as Eric said, building them inside your shop. So when you roll them into the place, everything really starts to make a lot more sense because people now are in sync with both teams.
Yeah, I think it's important that both of you mentioned the fact that of building out your systems, building out your racks in the warehouse, in the shop. Not only is that best practices from a VIXA standpoint, it just makes a whole lot of sense, because then you are mocking everything up and making sure that everything's working, not only just out of the box, but also, within the rack. Eric, one thing that I've learned from you over the years, and it was about network architecture. And there are several different types of structures that you can put this together. When it comes to AV over IP, is from your opinion, and Paul will get yours, and then John yours, is there an overarching benefit to one network architecture over another when it comes to AV over IP?
I used to. I like to just bulldoze right through it, right? And do a stack and do that. I have to give Netgear some credit. They totally changed my mind. To me, AV over IP, there's no better network configuration than the leaf and spine network. And I'll let Netgear talk about that more. They're more the experts on it. But after reviewing it, seeing what you can do with it, the cost, it just blows everything else away. And we tested it against the Catalyst switches, and it's amazing what we get out of the leaf and spine style networks versus just a straight through backbone on a Catalyst.
All right.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with where he's going with this. As we know, our customers and the way they lay out their buildings and, again, their equipment as it goes through the facilities, this just works much better for everybody. They're able to go through and actually demonstrate and work with this much simpler system with the existing infrastructure that's already been pulled in.
All right, John, what's leaf and spine and why is it better?
Well, I wish I had prepared a little bit more because I'm still the AV guy coming in here to a networking company. So I think Paul and Eric can correct me if I'm wrong, really. But in my layman's understanding of it, really, it's just sharing the resources and the links across multiple switches instead of just pushing everything up to the top, to the core switch and back down. And that's something, again, being an AV guy coming in, I wouldn't know how to wire these things up. But it's being able to share those links, and with the type of uplinks we have, the speed and the bandwidth of those, we can move the streams around easier and quicker than you might in a other stacking situation. We can stack as well, no problem. But also, because of the stuff we do, the special sauce we add on our switches, we enable that out of the box, and we make sure that when you do have some encoders that hook up to one switch, they're not going to flood the rest of your network. So that typically, I think, is where you'd use that core switch and go up the pike there. With spine and leaf, you're spreading that around, and we're making sure that the switch where the encoders are plugged in are going to limit that traffic across the rest of the network. And that's the huge thing that I think people have gotten bad taste in their mouth years ago when people would plug in AV over IP in a network and instantly bring that network down. And the IT admins are like, whoa, hang on a second. And they get a bad taste for AV over IP. If it's done correctly and we enable this out of the box again, then we can live on your network and enable multicasting in the proper way. And part of that is through that spine leaf technology.
Okay, very cool. Paul, Eric mentioned, Dante a few minutes ago. I want to bring that back around to other protocols that we need to be concerned about. It's not just AV over IP. And let's be frank, there are about, the last time that I counted, a dozen or so versions of AV over IP. I'm not even going to call flavors because different people use JPEG 2000. Some use different protocol or different types of encoders. So you've got AV over IP, but you also have these other transports that we're handling. What other protocols and what other signals do we need to worry about on these private networks?
I was gonna say other protocols and stuff that we run into a lot of times nowadays have been like NDI.
Okay.
Again, powerful one that covers a lot of different things. Also lets us delve into the broadcast world and things that they're involved in. I can't then at the same time not drop AES inside this, AES 67. Another important one that we want to go through and have considerations of inside of those designs.
All right. Eric, are there any gotchas with any of these other protocols or making these protocols play nicely on the same network?
You do. What's nice is, like I said, I'm sorry, I'm really a fan of Netgear right now. And the reason being is that they started off with the most bandwidth intensive one, which is SDOVE, which they made all their product work for 10 gig infrastructure, right? So what's nice is when you come down to the 1 gig, you got 10 to 1 extra overhead bandwidth and all this stuff. So the 1 gig stuff is just easily transporting through it right at the moment. So what I've been able to do with their stuff is there's just no worry for it. The only thing you really have to kind of watch out for is that some of the clock timings and when you set up your distserv, like to use the same, distserv numbers, right? You do have to look through the manuals a little bit, or you might have to modify it. The only one that gets a little tricky is I think the QSYS and Dante kind of like to use the same protocol, but there's a couple different ways we can set it up in the console, and the QSYS and play nicely together as well. The last thing, I really haven't had anything clog up each other after we've gone over to this at all. I haven't been able to break it. And the best part is I pull it out of the box and it works. My guys don't set it up.
One of the reasons that we actually were kind of gathered together is I was talking with Eric. Like I mentioned, the fact that Eric's in my backyard, and he and I have been buddies for a long time. He and I were talking about something that you, Paul, you and he are on, called the Netgear Council. It's a group of engineers, AV engineers. You guys sit around and you advise Netgear. You share stories. You help each other. I want to kind of break this apart because Netgear is not inherently unique, but this is one of the more intensive groups that I've gotten to know. Paul, from your standpoint and AVI system standpoint, what do you guys get out of being on a council like this?
Well, I'd say one of the big things we get is education.
Okay.
There's no question that as you've got your workforce and they're moving down the line of, again, technology, how can you keep them up to date? How can you keep them up to speed with what's going on out there in the world and what they're going to use in the field? And Netgear has really taken a very proactive stance of being involved in getting people educated inside of this. And that I really have to applaud. I think it's one of those opportunities that other manufacturers and companies could go through and make the investment of, but they've definitely taken the first jump at this. And that education, like I said, it starts off with your technicians and things that they're going to go through and start getting familiar with of the product. And you can look at that and say, well, that's just a bunch of marketing that's going through. But it goes much deeper than that they're able to go through and actually set up quizzes, tests, things like that for people to go through and actually validate that knowledge that they've put together inside of this, so that as they're going out into the field, they're putting things together. Is it beneficial to what I'm doing with a project that has a Netgear product inside of it? The answer is yes. But is it good information that I should know as being an AV professional? The answer is yes again. So that is one of the key things that really I would say AVI, and I like to think most integrators, are going to want to go through and take advantage of as they move forward.
One thing I will point out is the fact that you both are engineers, and it's very difficult to market directly to engineers because you guys have a pretty hard shell. I appreciate what you were saying about, it's not just marketing, because you're right. Getting through to engineers and strictly marketing straight to them is not an easy task. But if you bring education and bring value to the conversation, I have found that you guys are a lot more accepting to different messages. John, from Netgear's standpoint, what do you guys get besides obviously a group of really smart folks to kind of hang out with?
Yeah, that's huge. Of course, coming into him is just getting the people who are actually using this equipment. So, let me back up a little bit. Netgear saw the need for products in this marketplace, and they really started through our product line manager, Laurent Massia, started amassing the products and getting the features in there, but also the company in general was steering around to say, hey, let's focus on this marketplace. So hiring people like myself and technical product marketing managers like Randy and other sales engineers and other design engineers, we got the idea of let's just listen to the needs of the marketplace. So last December is when we first convened this Pro AV Council with 10 of the top integrators and consultants in the industry, and it was amazing the talent we got, and everybody was so great to give us good feedback, honest feedback, so we get feedback directly from the users into what they need in the marketplace, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. And we had engineers in the meetings, we had marketing, we had sales, the whole team was covered. So we really get that instant feedback without trying to make a product and hope it works like some manufacturers do. We could get feedback right away and know that that's what we're doing. In fact, we just talked with Eric and Paul, I think yesterday, or Paul maybe tomorrow. We're having more meetings about some new products coming up. So we're keeping this going for sure. It's not just a one-time thing.
One of the things in my conversation with you guys earlier on was about something that you guys started for Netgear with helping engineers design some of those systems. Walk me through that process. Like if I'm an engineer and I'm under Eric at CTI and I've got an issue, how do you walk me through that?
So that's the cool part about this. We have this team of design engineers that we offer for free for the Pro AV marketplace only. So not really for your home router or home system. But if you are getting ready for a job and need to design a network system, then you call up or you email this proavdesign@netgear.com email address, and within 2 hours, I believe it's a promise, to get back to you with some more questions, and we'll work with you on that design. So we'll help design that system before you actually need to submit it for approval or for reference, and then work with you through installation as well with that, and also post-installation for any issues that might come up too. So a dedicated team of people, and this is worldwide. So Netgear's certainly headquartered in the US, but we have a team of these design engineers throughout almost every time zone. So really 24/7, 7 days a week, we can really get somebody to you within a couple hours time to help.
And the fact that you have them spread out throughout the globe, it helps with that 2 hour turnaround, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Guys, as we wrap up here, Eric, I want to bring you in on this. How do engineers, folks where you guys are, and technicians, the guys and gals that you work with, how do you guys get the folks, the salespeople, and the kind of the integrators as a whole to embrace this AV over IP solution as a standard, or do we?
Yeah, for me, it was the jaw-dropping efficiency matrix. So basically, it's like, all right, I put a contest out there. I said, okay, guys, I'm going to go against you. I'm going to put together my AV over IP product. Anything over a 4x4, let's go build systems together, complete system. At the end of the day, who can ever beat me, I'm going to give you $100. And no one could beat me when I was doing over AV over IP. And we did it from the sales group.
Wow.
And then some of the savings and some of the systems, even not the asymmetrical ones, right, were being like $8,000 that they could hide in the hole on it, right? And we started winning bids that way. Now, the trick is, Eric, you give them all the secrets out, shut up, Eric. Well, the problem is that's out there now. I think everyone out there realizes that to some point. The scary part is what's always been is that you don't get that return if you have the network problems and people going out and people keep configuring and you get into voodoo land with AV guys who are working with networking stuff, right? That's where I really appreciated Netgear's approach to this. Was like going, look, we're going to build a product around AV instead of around networking. We understand networking, so we're going to build a product specifically for AV that looks at AV, that AV guys at the GUI level understand how to set up and solve those challenges. The innards of the guts of the switch are quality products, I'm sure, and I'm sure other people can build them. But the secret sauce is going to go there, and I think that's what I'm looking for. And the reason why I'm on the console is because if I don't have that element to where it's going to take a really high-priced guy to go set every single one of these up in the field every single time, we're not going to get the returns on the investment that we're looking for in that scenario.
So it's not just about saving on the matrix; it's also saving on labor costs as well.
Absolutely, right. And then, I'll let Nick here speak to it, but there's been I haven't. They offered me just to get me going. Hey, look, if we have any that are messed up or sent to you wrong, we'll take care of you, right? And I haven't had any sent to me wrong or messed up. Matter of fact, my guys are going like, "Oh my God, Eric, this is game changing." And so, to the fact that really what it was is it's coming up with the structure and the belief of what they're doing right now, and I got the trust from them because we've gotten into esports and gaming. And there's no one in the market right now that's moving bits faster. And there's no one who's more particular about their network. You talk about frame latency in the gaming world. The AV over IP stuff's easy for them considering that stuff,
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, as we wrap up here, is there something that either the AV industry, the integrators, manufacturers, consultants maybe, what will it take for this technology to take a bigger hold and have a bigger adoption rate?
Well, I think that's going to come down to just the stone cold truth. Does anybody else see anything else on the horizon that is better?
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that that's not coming. This is what's coming. This is what's happening for us. And if you're choosing to ignore this, stick your head in the sand, best of luck to you, I guess is what I'd say. So if I was going to say anything, it's get your network chops up, get your understanding of this. You understand AV, you understand what's happening to that, and all those principles still come into play inside of this. This is just one more dimension as we continue to grow and evolve. Anybody who's been in this business for any period of time has probably already gone through at least 2, if not 3 evolutions of what this industry has happened. Welcome to another one, folks.
Yeah, absolutely. John, as we wrap up here, you not only obviously work for Netgear, you come from an AV background. Sitting in a unique chair there, what do you think will take for AV over IP to gain bigger adoption?
I think a lot of it's really understanding and training and making sure people are comfortable. I know from my side, the AV people are a little less comfortable with IT, and we've talked about that a little bit already, but I think that's what it comes down to. They're going to deploy what they're more comfortable with, which they think they can deploy quicker with the least amount of headache. And as they start doing more and more of these, they'll understand that it actually can be easy. And as they start going to more trainings, Netgear is partnering with a lot of manufacturers. That's where it's fun to be in my seat now with all the different manufacturers we get to partner with to offer training through the SDVOE organization and just regular Netgear training with these other partners to show them how easy it is. I think that's what's going to start making the dent in the numbers of adoption.
Very good. Eric, last question here is how do we make people more comfortable then? John said, let's make them more comfortable. How do we do that?
What we got to do is, as an industry, we got to give up this proprietary crap. Everyone knows that everyone's borrowing a piece of Tico and JPEG 2000 streamings, right?
Yep.
And make it and let's do some interrupting, right? Yeah, you can have a superior technology on it, but the one thing that hasn't unified the AV over IP streaming yet is that everyone's gone and done their own thing. Of course, they want to grab their market share and stuff. But I think it's time for a Dante Video or someone else out there to regulate it all, do plug fest and go, look, we're going to make all this stuff interrupt and work together. And I think the first companies that get there on that, Automate looks like it's getting there. NDI is already there. Look what they did. They just devalued a ton of companies overnight by giving out the algorithm everyone can use.
Yeah.
But it will move the industry forward. You can sit there and pretend that you're going to own it forever, or we can just get over it and then start making better products that fit into it. And SDOVE, yes, they're already there, and making their stuff interrupt. And the biggest problem that I have with SDOVE is this, in short terms and giant productions, it makes total sense. 10 gig infrastructure technology a little bit though, and doing it in mass quantities and lower level rooms. It's a little too expensive to get the 10 gig infrastructure in for that, where it makes the same sense as 1 gig.
All right, very good. That'll be a good place to stop it. Thank you all so much. John Hinkle from Netgear, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate your time, and everybody else's too. Been good conversation.
Absolutely. How do people get a hold of you or Netgear?
So you can find me at jhenkel, JHENKEL, @netgear.com, and certainly netgear.com for more information.
All right, very good. Mr. Paul Miller from AVI Systems, welcome. Thank you, sir.
And it's always been a pleasure to see you again, Tim.
Thank you. How do people get a hold of you guys or AVI Systems, or you or AVI Systems?
Sure. AVIsystems.com is the easiest place to go through and find us. Otherwise, you have the option of going through, if you're in the San Diego area, next Wednesday, the 11th, AVI Live will be happening, and you can stop by and see us there. So lots of opportunities to go through and find lots of people from AVI Systems located nationwide.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I'm Mr. Snyder. Thank you, sir. How do people get a hold of you or CTI?
Yeah, at our webpage, we've done some improvements to it now. So we got someone monitoring it 24/7. We're more than happy to take on any questions, and they get to the right people. It's pretty impressive technology we added to it. So just want to chat with a particular person with the company, type it in there, and we'll get you on board.
All right, thanks, guys. For us, for AVNation, go by the website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You'll find programs like this and a host of others, including 2 weekly programs that looks at the commercial side of the AV industry and the residential side of AV. All that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.